So the point of this podcast is just a little discussion about the KISS Album Dynasty, or Dynasty, for those playing at home. Um, so this was KISS's move away from basically the hard rock sound into more of a disco, pop friendly, radio friendly type of music. They'd seen their record sales falling a little bit, and tickets for concerts were dropping as well. So KISS wanted to move into something which was a bigger market, which was disco at the time. So the album came out in 1979, and here in Australia, I sort of refer to this as the Australian album because all these songs, like I Was Made for Loving You and Sure Know Something, I think even Magic Touch got a lot of airplay and still do to this day. You won't hear anything other than Shandy, maybe Rock and Roll All Night on the radio, but you will hear I Was Made for Loving You and Sure Know Something. So yeah, Australia loves this album, and I know they did a tour off the back of Unmasked to Australia with the new drummer Eric Carr when the album was released. So yeah, it's very popular here in Australia. I don't really know why they decided to do this. I know that the Bee Gees had a lot of success when they changed to disco, but you know, KISS, for a lot of people at that age, they're extremely popular because of their hard rock sound and also their image. But then they sort of, as sales went away towards the end of Love Gun, and yeah, they just decided to move into something that was going to make them more money and try to break into that market, I guess, which to the fans was a bit of a betrayal, but also within the band they weren't exactly confident that all members wanted to do that. I know that Peter Criss didn't actually play on the album. It was Anton Fig, even though Vinnie Poncia produced his solo album. He didn't allow him to play on the album. He does sing on Dirty Living, and he does play drums on Dirty Living, but that's the only impact he had on the album. Now, Ace Frehley, I guess they must have started to realise that he was going to leave, so they've given him a lot of songwriting credits and also lead vocal roles on this album. He sings on 2000 Man, which is actually a Keith Richards song. He's also on Hard Times, which is a great song, and Save Your Love. The album itself is actually pretty good. I know it gets a lot of slack from the greater KISS audience, but listening to it back in front, it's actually really good. I mean, yeah, it has a disco sound to it, but I mean, pop music is popular music, and the greater audience likes it. Now, at the time, it might have been seen as something like, why are they doing this? But to me, looking at it now, I think that, you know, as time's gone by, no one really cares anymore, and to just put something like that out and listen to it now, you can really just appreciate it for what it was. And look, there is, for me, I mean, growing up, probably the first song, you know, I was born in the 80s, so the first song I heard was I Was Made for Loving You, and I thought it was pretty rocking. Like, they played it on the rock station in Melbourne, and yeah, I wouldn't have even guessed it was disco, but now I can see how people associate it with it. And I even know that KISS themselves have pushed away from the fact that it is a disco, and when they play it live, they add more distorted riffs in to make it sound hard rocking. I know on Alive 3 they talk about it. Is it Alive 3? I don't know if it's Alive 3, but I know one of the live albums they talk about how this is how it should have sounded. But, you know, they haven't really played anything else from this album live. I think Paul Stanley did one on the One Night DVD that he released, One Live Kiss. I'm not sure which song it was. I can't really remember off the top of my head. It might have been Magic Touch. Yeah, I think it was Magic Touch. But yeah, they haven't really played anything else live that I know of. It doesn't really get hit. I know when they toured Australia, they do I Was Made for Loving You, and sometimes they do Sure Know Something, but yeah, they haven't really touched on any of the other songs from this album live. I know that when I saw Ace Frehley in Melbourne, he played 2000 Man, and Hard Times, so that was cool. Reading through Peter Criss's book, he discussed how the band wasn't able to play Dirty Living live because it was too far out of their range as musicians to play, but I don't believe that to be true. I just think it's a better studio song and probably wouldn't capture the same impact live. So as I said, we had Vinny Poncia. He produced it. He worked on a lot of songs with Paul Stanley on the album. Got Howard Marks that worked on Charisma with Gene Simmons. I'm not sure that Gene Simmons actually played bass on I Was Made for Loving You. I know Anton Fig, as I mentioned, didn't play drums on the album. As far as chart positions go, and it doesn't really mean anything to me. I'm just having a look at it now. Got to number 2 in Australia, and in the US it got to number 9. So that's a fairly good effort. In the UK it was 50, and Canada it was 6. So they had a pretty big hit with I Was Made for Loving You. It's gone platinum in America and double platinum in Canada. And yeah, for me it's one of my favourite albums. I can put it on. I love the cover art, sorry. I reckon it's cool having all the band members together, even if they weren't in the band at the time, or if they were having disputes. It's a toss back to the first cover. It looks really cool. It was recorded at Electric Lady Studios, and they had 2 singles off it. So for me, it's good to see Ace Frehley getting a bit more recognition on the album. It's sad to see Peter Criss going, but obviously he was going through his own personal issues and his drumming wasn't quite up to scratch for the album. That's been widely discussed. I still reckon his drumming's fantastic on the other albums. For what it is, he made the right decision to move away from it, even though he was a jazz musician, as he says, but the album pushed into a more disco area. Now, for him to say, I thought that we were going in a direction I didn't want to move in, well, that's a bit funny because, jazz and disco are somewhat connected. So the band itself criticised the album, except for Paul Stanley, who I guess sort of, you can tell, led the push for this. But I don't think that it should be reviewed negatively because it is a great album. And if you are a KISS fan, you're going to appreciate all their works, whether what they did was right at the time or not. So I like it, and I just want to have a little bit of a talk about it. I think that the guitar solo on Sure Knows Something's really good, and it's good to see Paul Stanley getting a solo. Maybe one of the only songs that he plays a solo on. And it's interesting that we had all band members singing on this album, and even I think Gene Simmons only sings on 2 songs, whereas Ace Frehley's on 4. So, or 4 or 3. So that's it's a pretty balanced album. If they ever had to give him one more song to Peter Criss, then we'd had almost 2 or 3 each. So just my thoughts on the album. I really like it. Let me know what you think, and thanks for listening.